Hi, everyone. Very special opportunity. Even though the Kabbalah of Mental Wellness Part 1 course is officially over, this week being Chanukah, I figured it would be a lot of fun to do one more little lecture, little extra bonus lecture. And it's going to be a little bit of mental wellness and my my personal humor. So if you'll humor me and spend this time, I'm excited to see where it's going to go. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I have some ideas, and hopefully over the course of our time together, we're going to formulate them. So with Hanukkah right around the corner, I figured I would talk about the psychology of the dreidel. I'm going to explore the five components of human personality and how they relate to Hanukkah and the dreidel. It's a lovely tradition. It's a beautiful tradition. I grew up with it. Maybe you did as well. Playing dreidel during the festival of Hanukkah. In Hebrew, it's called Sivivon. I think in French, it's called Tupi. What's the dreidel? It's a four-sided top containing four Hebrew letters: Nun, Gimel, Hey, and Shin. The four sides join to form a point, and that's how the dreidel spins, on the point that is joined by the four sides. Now, I know until this moment, you just thought it was a fun kids game, and some people turn it into an adult gambling game, which I don't know how that happened. But of course, our job in this class is to turn everything on its head. And why don't we try spinning the dreidel upside down? Let's turn it on its head. All Jewish traditions and customs have a profound spiritual meaning. And so today, I want to discuss the deeper symbolism behind the dreidel game. Jewish philosophy, Kabbalah, teaches that human behavior is driven by four primary factors: ego, bodily urges, reason, and a compulsion to destroy. Let's start with ego. Each of us has an ego, a craving for power, self dominance, self determination. All of us experience an incessant demands from our bodies. We all have the power of reason, the ability to try to make sense out of reality. And each of us have a compulsion toward evil, toward destruction. For many of us, this impulse finds expression maybe in a dream or in a fleeting thought. And for others, unfortunately, sometimes it's actualized in behavior. This last impulse is unique in the sense that it rarely displays its, its genuinely disturbing face to the person who experiences it. Our compulsion towards evil usually disguises its demeanor behind the veil of the other three human qualities. It uses the ego, the bodily needs, and human reason as a means to explain, to justify its abominable goals. Yet, at the root of this urge is a simple craving, a craving toward evil and towards destruction. And that's rooted in the human psyche. Beneath these four familiar components of our personality, there's a fifth, deeper dimension. It's known in Kabbalah as the higher self or the inner self. It's the moral conscience of the human spirit, the spark of God within us, the etzem, that drives us to transcend ourselves and to attempt to touch the truth of reality. This inner self inspires human idealism. It reflects the goodness and the integrity of its creator. And if the four elements of the human engine are detached from the higher divine self, potentially each can become dangerous. A self-serving ego can drive us to destroy those who are standing in our way. The bodily urges and temptations can plunge us into the abyss. Excessive self-indulgence creates addiction, chaos. The power of reason on its own allows a person to rationalize any type of behavior, to invalidate the world's moral boundaries. So, with reason alone, we can even justify cruelty and barbarism. Our rational and intellectual sophistication can even lead us to justify true evil. Terrorists are turned into frustrated militants, and human monsters who burn little children are judged as equals to their victims. Reason alone, devoid of moral clarity, can become dangerous. And finally, our impulse toward evil may easily compel us to inflict suffering on innocent human beings. Yet, on the other hand, if we open ourselves to the divine essence of our personality and we begin absorbing its beautiful melodies, we can employ these four components as instruments for our spirituality, for our moral growth. Our egos, bodily desires, and the power of reason may be used in a constructive and good fashion. And that's what I want to talk about today. Our impulse to destroy can even be used as a weapon to eradicate and destroy the evil within ourselves, to put an end to the evil within the world around us. All these things, and you're thinking to yourself, why is the rabbi going down this doomful path? Because we got to turn it on its head. That's our job. That's the job of the Dreidel. That's the job of this class. We got to turn everything on its head. In Kabbalah, the microcosm reflects the macrocosm, and vice versa. The macrocosm reflects the microcosm. So Kabbalah explains that these four elements of the human psyche are represented by the four global empires that dominated the world in past history. The first was the Babylonian Empire. The Babylonian Empire was notorious for its ambition of unbridled power, of dominance. Its first king was Nebuchadnezzar. The only way that you know about him today is because there's a bottle of wine named after him. This Nebuchadnezzar, he destroyed the first temple in Jerusalem. He exiled the Jewish people to Babylonia, which is present-day Iraq. He embodied the egotist par excellence. Then, after the Babylonian Empire, came the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire, Iran, notorious for its incessant indulgence and hedonism of materialistic pleasures. Achashverosh, the story of Purim, the Persian king, the husband of Queen Esther. He threw a party that lasted for 187 days. Imagine a party that continued for 6 months straight. After the Persian Empire, the Greek Empire followed. The Greek Empire is interesting because its contribution to Civilization was the development of logic, of philosophy. For the Greeks, the human mind was the zenith of existence. Then, after the Greeks, came the Roman Empire. This empire was mostly led by cruel monarchs whose brutality often knew no limits. The Romans destroyed the Second Temple. They massacred millions of Jews and countless other innocent human beings. But perhaps most importantly, yeah, Rome turned brutality into a culture. The gladiator, the height of Roman sports, was a chilling example of this. After a gladiator's defeat, if the crowd gave the signal for him to die, there was a ritual to be observed. With one knee on the ground, the loser grasped the thigh of the victor, who, holding the helmet or the head of his opponent, plunged his sword into the neck and cut the throat, depending on the weapon. To die, well, a gladiator was not allowed to ask for mercy. He wasn't even allowed to scream when he was killed. If defeated but mortally wounded, the gladiator was not killed in front of the audience, but was taken from the arena to be executed humanely with a hammer into the forehead in private. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. It's a little grotesque, but I want to give you just the idea. Now, each of these four empires dominated the world, and astoundingly, each of them saw Judaism as a very threat to their very existence. Babylonia, Persia, Greece, and Rome, they each declared war against the people of Israel. They each tried, the greatest empires in history, tried to destroy the Jews. Why? And I know I'm not the first person to ask this question, and I know probably you have asked this question. Why were these mighty empires obsessed with a few people, a little minority, the Jews? Why do they care? And of course, why do they continue to care? So the answer, at least the answer that I'll give, is that to their minds, as to the many monarchs and rulers that would follow, the Jewish people represented this fifth dimension. And this fifth dimension challenged the very way they perceived the objective of life. Hitler put it in these words: conscience is a Jewish invention. It's a blemish, like circumcision. That's what he said. Conscience is a Jewish invention. It's a blemish like circumcision. The Jews throughout their entire history were obsessed with the question of right and wrong. And guess what? We still are. I know of no other group that is so critical of its behavior as the Jews. Judaism taught that the most important thing for civilization is not self-aggrandizement like Babylonia, not indulgence like Persia, not even logic or the pursuit of knowledge like Greece, and certainly not the unbridled aggression of Rome, but rather the most critical component of a society is its unequivocal commitment to universal morality. To morality based in the presence of a living God who cares about human behavior. The Jews have always seen themselves as chosen to bestow, not chosen. People start talking about chosenness, chosen to bestow upon human history the dignity of purpose and to refine and to sublimate the ego, Babylonia, the body, Persia, logic itself, Greece, the evil impulse, Rome, to refine those, the ego, the body, logic, the evil impulse, as instruments to serve the moral and spiritual cause. According to Kabbalah, one of the primary reasons for the Jewish people living in exile among these four empires was to gain insight and depth into the unique energy of these civilizations and then utilize them as instruments for serving God. Kabbalah defines it as elevating the sparks. But in the process, the clash was usually profound. The confrontation between Judaism and ancient Greece can serve as a great example. The most influential thinker in Greece, maybe the most influential thinker in all of Western intellectual history, the great Aristotle. He argued in his Politics that killing children was essential to the functioning of society. This is what he wrote. There must be law. There must be a law that no imperfect or maimed child shall be brought up. And to avoid an excess in population, some children must be exposed. For a limit must be fixed on the population of the state. Just want to note the tone of his statement. Aristotle isn't saying, I like killing babies. He's making a cold, rational calculation that overpopulation is dangerous. And this is the most expedient way to keep it in check. Plato, the great Plato, he wrote in his Symposium, he said, I, for my part, am at a loss to say what greater blessing a man can have in earliest youth than an honorable lover. The Greeks introduced into human consciousness an idea that the human being is the center of all things. The human mind and its ability to understand and observe and comprehend things rationally is the be-all and end-all. To the Jews, human beings were created in the image of God. To the Greeks, gods were made in the image of human beings. To the Jews, the physical world was something to be perfected and elevated spiritually. To the Greeks, the physical world was perfect. To Greeks, what was beautiful was holy. To the Jews, what was holy was beautiful. Completely opposite views. And these completely opposite views were bound to clash. And they did. 2nd century BCE. The Syrian Greek Empire sought to Hellenize. And they Hellenized the Jews by force. They didn't want to destroy the Jew like Hitler. They didn't want to kill Jews. They wanted to kill Judaism. They wanted to put an end to the faith of Judaism. Women who allowed their sons to be circumcised were killed with their sons tied around their necks. The scholars of Israel were hounded, they're hunted and killed. No scholar of Israel can exist. Jews who refused to eat pork, to sacrifice hogs, were tortured to death. The altars of Zeus and other pagan deities were erected in every village, and Jews of every area were forced to participate in sacrificial services. What does Chanukah represent? What does Chanukah celebrate? It celebrates the victory of the Jewish way of life over the Greek way of life. And by the way, the battle's still going on in different forms. But here we are. The Greeks, I don't know where they are. Greece definitely exists. There's definitely some moussaka and maybe some oil. But the Greeks, what they wanted to do, they don't. And as Mark Twain said it so poetically, the Jews saw it all, they lived through it all. What we have seen, my gosh, what we have seen. Now, I think you can appreciate the secret behind the dreidel. The four sides of the dreidel represent four dimensions of the human psyche: the ego, body, reason, and evil. And this is reflected in the four Hebrew letters of Nun, Gimel, Shin, and Hey. What do they stand for? The Nun represents for Nefesh. The Gimel stands for Guf. The Shin represents Seichel, and the Hey represents Hakol. I'm going to go through each of them. Nefesh, what does that mean? It means self or identity. It reflects human ego, the Nun, the Nefesh, the ego. Guf means body. It represents all the bodily urges, the body, the urges, the temptations. Seichel means reason. The Shin represents the Seichel, defines the human quest for knowledge and understanding. And finally, the Hey, Hakol. Hakol means everything. It symbolizes the force within each of us, which, like we just said, will cloak itself in everything and anything to reach its goals. The sharp and almost immeasurable point situated at the bottom, at the foundation of the dreidel, that represents the fifth, the divine component of the human spirit, the spark of infinity. The spark of infinity within us cannot be measured by space or time. It serves as the foundation of each human being, just as it serves as the foundation of the dreidel. On Chanukah, once again, this year, we will celebrate the victory of the Jewish way of life over Greek Hellenism, the triumph of divine ethics over human aesthetics. And we're charged, once again, with a mission to kindle our godly flame. That's what the Chanukah candles represent. I use oil because the miracle happens with oil. So I light my flame with oil, olive oil, pure olive oil. And so I think Chanukah is an opportune time to spin our psychological four-sided dreidel on its point, directing the other four components of our personality, reorienting them as tools to express pure love, to express the spirituality of the soul. And maybe I'll be even so bold to encourage you to try to spin the dreidel upside down. Turn it on its head. The world, time and again, has tried to get us. Here we are. We'll stand in the window. We'll look out into the world and we'll say, here's our light. No matter what you do to try to get us, whether it was through the Babylonians, through the Persians, through the Greeks or through the Romans, through the Ottoman Empire, through the Nazis, through Hamas, through today. No matter what you've done, we will stand, look out at you, and we'll fill the world with light. Where each of us will take our candle. The beautiful thing about the candle, dear Babylonians, dear Greeks, dear Romans, the beautiful thing about the candle is when you light another candle, your candle doesn't diminish one even iota. And that's why the Jewish way of life continues to flourish. Even if you think it's a threat, we don't think it's a threat. We don't think anything else is a threat to us because we can light a candle and your candle does not diminish. And so we'll do that. And we'll do it again for 8 days, each day, increasing in more light. Because in the middle of this dark, dark world, that's our job. We're the action people. We're not passive. We're going to continuously, one day after the next, add more light. And my blessing to you is may the light that we add in our homes, may it shine so brightly. May all those lights connect and may that large flame of light be able to reach all those who are in need of light right now, whether emotionally, physically, wherever they are, wherever they may be. May the spirit and the joy of Hanukkah truly, truly bring them the light and joy that they so deserve and need. A very happy Hanukkah. Thank you for spending this time with me.